Hi! So, what we're doing today is we're going to try to design the artwork to go on a seed packet. And the first thing that we want to do is have the artwork proportional to fit on the seed packet. That does not mean that we have to do the artwork this small. It means that we have to have the length and the height of the artwork be relatively the same size so that when we reduce it digitally, like take a photo of it, then it will fit on the seed packet. So the first step is to measure how large a standard seed packet is. This is about 3¼ inches wide by 4½ inches tall. Now, I have a piece of wood to do the wood burning artwork on, and it's slightly larger than the seed packet, but it's not quite the same proportion. The wood, just by looking at it, appears taller relatively than how wide it is compared to the seed packet. So, measuring the piece of wood, we have about 5¼ inches by 9 inches. How do we figure out what proportion we need to match a seed packet? Well, you can use some algebra and x's and y's and that, but basically what we want is to have it proportional. So if the width of the wood is 5¼ inches, 5.25 if you make it into a decimal, we want to figure out how to utilize as much of this piece of wood as we can. And since it's taller proportionately than the seed packet, we're going to start with how wide it is and try to use as much of this surface width-wise as possible for our image. So I used Excel and just did a quick little calculation. If you multiply 3.25, the width of the seed packet, by 1.6, you get 5.25. That's your multiplier. And then if you use the same number, 1.6, times the height of your seed packet, you get 0.72 or 7.2 inches. So in order to do a wood burning on this piece of wood that would be proportional to your seed packet, I'm not going to use the entire height of the wood. I'm only going to use 7.2 inches, or just over 7 inches, of the height of the wood. And then I'm going to leave an area blank. That way the image on the wood is proportional to be transferred over onto a seed packet. You can also trim the wood after you've figured out the proportions so that you can trim it to 7.2 inches, and that way the original artwork doesn't have that extra trim on it. But that's how you figure out your proportions from a commercial product to the surface that you're working on. And how did I come up with 1.6 as the multiplying factor? You can use algebra, or I just played with it a little bit. I started out with 1.75, and it came up a little bit too big. Multiplying by that factor I would have needed a wider piece of wood. So I dropped it down to trying multiplying by 1.5. That turned out a little bit smaller. It didn't utilize all of the wood I had available. So I just kind of played back and forth with the Excel table and tried a few different numbers to get close so that I know what size I needed to make my artwork on the wood. Okay, so I know that the board that I'm using is 1.5 or 5.5 inches wide, and I want to utilize just a hair over 7 inches for the artwork and leave some space at the top and bottom that would get cut off if I use it normally, and if it gets transferred to being on a seed pack. So just measuring out this is the area that I'm going to be working on to keep it proportional so it can be transferred onto the seed packet. Okay. So you notice when you look at most of your seed packs, they have lettering and names and brands and price and weight, and other things around the edges of the seed pack. The main image is centered and a little bit adjusted down from the top. So when I'm measuring out the area that I'm going to work on the board, I'm doing it fairly approximate. Our actual math turned out to be 7.6 inches tall, so a little over 7.5. And I measured out 7.5 and marked the area that I'm going to work on the board. But then within that area, I'm still going to leave some space for those extra things, for borders and for labeling. So the actual area that I am going to concentrate most of the image of the wood burning is probably going to be about in here. Pretty centered, but dropped a little bit from the top. And that's the area I'm going to focus on creating the image that I want to be portrayed on the seed packet. All right, a note on how to find reference pictures. So I want reference pictures of tomato. I'm going to go to Google and type in tomato, and then I want images, which is right up here, images. So I'm going to click on images, and that will bring me to all sorts of images on tomatoes. However, a lot of these are copyright, and we don't want to infringe on any copyright problems. So we come over here to Tools. And if you click on Tools, it gives you a little drop-down menu here. We want to go to Usage Rights. Click on that. Right now we're looking at all the images for tomatoes. We want Creative Commons license. So in that little drop-down menu, click on Creative Commons licenses. And then you get images that you can use as reference material for your artwork without having to pay money in order to use them. So you can go through the different pictures and find one that you like. When you do find one that you like, you can click on it and click on it again. And then the one that I found earlier was here. And you want to go up to your web browser where it has the web address that you're getting the picture from. So this web address is publicdomainpictures.net, and then it will have a reference number that is very important for citation later on, and usually some descriptive term to name the photo as. You want to copy that, right-click and copy, and save that entire web address somewhere along with the picture that it goes with. That way you have that information and you can cite exactly where you got your reference material from. Photosynthesis is a process used by plants and other organisms to convert light energy into chemical energy that, through cellular respiration, can later be released to fuel the organism's activities. Some of this chemical energy is stored in carbohydrate molecules, such as sugars and starches, which are synthesized from carbon dioxide and water, hence the name photosynthesis, from the Greek photo, meaning light, and synthesis, meaning put together. Most plants, algae, and cyanobacteria perform photosynthesis, and such organisms are called photoautotrophs. Photosynthesis is largely responsible for producing and maintaining the oxygen content of the Earth's atmosphere, and supplies most of the energy necessary for life on Earth. Although photosynthesis is performed differently by different species, the process always begins with energy from light that is absorbed by proteins called reaction centers that contain green chlorophyll. In plants, these proteins are held inside organelles called chloroplasts, which are mostly abundant in leaf cells, while in bacteria they're embedded in the plasma membrane. In these light-dependent reactions, some energy is used to strip electrons from suitable substances, such as water, producing oxygen molecules as a byproduct. The hydrogen freed from splitting of water is used in the creation of two further compounds that serve as short-term stores of energy, enabling its transfer to drive other reactions. These compounds are reduced NADPH and ATP, the energy currency of cells. In plants and algae and cyanobacteria, sugars are synthesized by a subsequent sequence of light-independent reactions called the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle, atmospheric carbon dioxide is incorporated into already existing organic carbon compounds, such as RuBP, using the ATP and NADPH produced by the light-dependent reactions. The resulting compounds are then reduced and removed to form further carbohydrates, such as glucose. In other bacteria, different mechanisms, such as the reverse Krebs cycle, are used to achieve the same end. But we're not going to get that complicated here. You can research this a bit more on your own and come up with your own understanding of photosynthesis and how to try to depict it. So, you've been watching as I drew freehand the image that I want to wood burn. And if you've been following these lesson plans along, we've talked about several different ways of transferring an image. Freehand, to me, is one of the most fun ways to transfer an image, but it is also one of the most difficult ways. I freehand sketched the image that I want to wood burn, and I compiled it from one reference photo of tomatoes and several different reference pictures and illustrations and conceptual guides of photosynthesis. You'll note that I placed the light-dependent reaction on the top and the light-independent, or the dark reaction, on the bottom, which kind of is intuitive to me for understanding, like in the bottom it would be darker and be shaded. And then I went through and wood burned the artwork, and I tried to wood burn it in a fairly dark or high contrast way so that the image is easily reproducible. And the final step here is, because it's a commercial product and we want it to be eye-catching, I'm going through and adding just a little bit of color to the wood burning so that it is a little bit more eye-catching if it actually makes it onto a seed packet. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this and have a great day.